Hi there. Well, now we're going to talk about innovation. And I spent a lot of time working on the innovation policies of government, working for companies around innovation, including, for example, the well known large brewery called Molson's. And I also worked for Oracle and Microsoft and Google. And I've worked for Heinz and many of the forestry companies. Done all sorts of things in the innovation space, both in the private sector and for governments. I worked for the federal government on the innovation strategy back in the early 2000s, and I worked for both the BC, Saskatchewan, and Alberta governments on their innovation strategy, and was quite involved in all sorts of issues, particularly in the growth of the tech sector, the biotech sector, the medical devices sector, all sorts of kind of detailed work. So this is one of the spaces I happen to know a lot about from first-hand experience. But it's a problem. I've already mentioned several times in these video presentations just how significant some of these issues are. So this presentation will be short, but really focused on what we need to think about. So what's the problem? Well, we're not doing very well. I've already mentioned most of these things, but we're not great at innovation. I have said, and it's true, we're actually quite good at invention. But I'm looking at innovation as not simply taking a plane off, but landing it in a commercial space to produce wealth, revenue, and productivity gains. So we have a lot of innovation that we create, but is actually done in other countries. In fact, Canada is seen as such a small market that we do very little of the innovation in country. A lot of the stuff that we invent gets commercialized elsewhere. So that's one kind of problem. So some of these issues are summarized here, but we also have a kind of other set of challenges as well. So we're kind of fifth in the G7 on innovation output, like patents, trademarks, and those kind of things. We rank fifth on digital infrastructure, which is not great. There's about 30% of Northern Ontario that's disconnected from the net altogether, and we have some of the most expensive broadband in the world. So there's a lot we can do to think about what we need to do to improve innovation. And I already mentioned the literacy challenge. We have about 40 to 42%, depending on which study you're looking at, of people who are low in literacy who are in the workplace. There's a major study that my colleague and friend Scott Murray was involved in that showed a 1% gain in literacy could lead to a 5% gain in productivity and a 3% rise in GDP, which would produce a new set of revenues annually of $60 billion a year. Now just think about this. A 1% gain in literacy is the most significant thing we can do to increase productivity and grow the economy. Think about that for a minute. Now, governments see innovation as their bailiwick. This is something we do. We're very good at it. We have a lot of money going on it, and we intend to make a difference. Every minister I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot, they don't tend to last long, says the same kind of things. We hear the same things over and over again. The reality is, and I think Alex Usher in his blog post recently on Canada's innovation mess has really captured some of these issues really well. You should look at those, and I'll post a link in the link to this video on the Coach's Corner. So we're not very good at this because we confuse spending more money with making an impact. In fact, the real issue is that unless companies invest in innovation, most innovations don't go anywhere. For every $1 of government money, it takes $3 of private money to get us anywhere near the market. And a new product arrives in the market for each 1.5 million of business expenditure. So one product for 1.5 million of business money, not government money, and then less than 20% survive, well, 22% survive the first year. So the failure rate is very high. It's called risk and venture capital for a reason. And companies, especially small companies, don't have the cash to risk. Large companies risk and occasionally get it right, but occasionally get it wrong. And we have a mindset that says, unless you know it's going to be safe, don't place the bet. And so a lot of bets get placed because they're very safe. In other countries, like the United States, bets get placed because they're risky, but the rewards are high. We don't have that mindset. So that's broken. We've had a load of different government strategies. And I just want to highlight the current one, which is this idea of superclusters or clusters. And we have a number of these. One's called NGen, which is in advanced manufacturing, and I've been partnering with them. Another one's in digital technologies, and I've been partnering with them. Another one is in the protein industries, based in Manitoba, and I've worked with them. And the other one is AI-powered supply chain. So these are the kind of clusters. The problem is they don't have good connections with real companies doing real work. The protein one is probably the better one of these because they are really engaged across the supply chain. But NGen, for example, has very little presence west of Manitoba. And so, we have these kind of national network organizations that have a lot of money, but kind of fuzzy. And they're not delivering impact and value. And eventually they'll all die. And they'll all die because they can't make an impact on the behavior of companies. And that's the issue. How do we shift the mindset of corporations? So, these are problematic because of the lack of deep collaboration between the research community and industry, the lack of real investment in these superclusters. A different cluster, just to give an example of one that works, is a cluster called FP Innovations, Forest Products Innovations. It has presence, it's based in Vancouver, but also has a presence in Quebec. It's owned by the pulp and paper and wood products companies. They own it. It has some government money, but it's fundamentally paid for and used by companies to imagine what they could do next to become more efficient, more productive, more effective, and more innovative. And they've done some remarkable work. It's worth having a good look at what FP Innovations have been doing. Another component of this strategy, if we could call it that, which kind of isn't, it's bits and pieces of a jigsaw puzzle with no picture on the box. We have a thing called the Buy Canada strategy, which is modelled on the small business investment, innovation and research regime in the United States. There, every government department has a portion of their money that must be spent on local new innovation. So imagine the Department of Defense in the US, which is huge. They have to spend 1%. So that's like $100 billion on innovative products from American companies who are in early stage development. Now, we can't spend this money. We had 750 million available for this, and we spent less than $1 million so far, just 13%, since this fund was founded in 2017. So we don't know what to do with this. We don't know how to do it. We're not very good at it, and we don't understand what it really is. So we have a broken policy innovation system and investment system. So what are our options? What can we do? Well, we could create an innovation-focused education system, starting with a line from junior high to really get people not practicing at entrepreneurship, but actually creating businesses and running them. I've worked with young people. I work with a team of 16-year-olds who sold an idea to Disney Corporation, a game idea, and they built it and sold it and were multimillionaires before they got to high school. Why don't we do more of that? I think there's huge potential in lots of young people. We need different and better tax incentives for R&D, especially in small and medium companies. And we need to encourage this public-private partnership. We need to get this small business investment regime right. And we need to do more to make that possible. I think we could also create much more support for company growth. We currently have just 17 unicorns or narwhals in Canada. We could have 50 or 100. We need to really deregulate Canada, both provincially and federally, so that it's actually a lean system. We're still ranked reasonably good for doing business, but actually, as a business owner, it's not great. Now, it's a lot better than the European Union, but that was a mess and still is. When I ran a UK company, I hired a new clerk, a new office staff member, every 18 months to cope with the new regulations from the EU that we now had to deal with. We also need to massively increase the distribution of broadband and lower its unit cost. Our costs should be the same as those in other jurisdictions that are truly innovative. If we were to look at every country in the G20 and compare our internet costs with theirs, we would be shocked, and should be shocked, and we need to do something about it. Finally, we have to find incentives to encourage everybody, corporations, non-profits, governments, to really embrace emerging technologies. There are no incentives really for doing that, and I think we need a lot more. And we've got to do something about the skills agenda. We need to do more to encourage companies to invest in training. We need to more to incentivize people for their personal commitment to lifelong learning. And we need some new resources, new ways of thinking about on-demand, competency-based, competency-assessed learning that helps you get a job. And we don't do any of those things very well. So, innovation is not an option for Canada. It's a necessity. Now, I didn't say this. This is from Jim, who some of you will know as the former co-CEO of Research in Motion, AA BlackBerry, but now involved with the Vector Institute and other innovative activities in Ontario. And a real inspiration, actually, to many of us who've worked in this space. So we don't have an option but to get involved in innovation in a different and new way. But there's no sign of it happening. Unless you do something about it, unless you in your projects and in your work and in your leadership choose to make this a priority for you, I think you should. Thank you.